People with high vibration show three unusual signs, according to Carl Jung, but Jung found that this ability to see everything was not a gift. It was so dangerous, it often destroyed people. Today, I will reveal the three unusual signs that mark someone as either extraordinary or on the verge of psychological collapse. In his clinical practice, Jung documented patients with what he called differentiated perception. These were individuals who could read micro-expressions, sense hidden emotions, and perceive psychological patterns that escaped everyone else. They saw through social masks, detected lies instantly, and felt the unconscious tensions in every room. Jung called this discovery dangerous because these people consistently ended up isolated, exhausted, and unable to maintain normal relationships. Not because they were unstable, but because seeing everything came with a psychological cost no one understood. This awareness was seen as a curse, making them too sensitive or overly emotional. Here is something most people miss about empaths and highly sensitive individuals. Society teaches them to suppress this power. They are weapons waiting to be forged. Every kind person who sees too much learns to doubt their perceptions, to apologize for existing, to silence themselves. But what happens when that suppression breaks? When someone finally trusts what they have always seen? The first unusual sign shows that these individuals are not weak victims. They are psychological geniuses in hiding. When Jung asked his patients with differentiated perception to describe their relationships, he expected scattered thoughts of damaged minds. What he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about empaths. These patients had not been broken by abuse. They had been studying it. Jung found that empaths kept detailed mental records of every person who had ever hurt them. They knew their abusers' triggers, insecurities, and deepest fears. They had mapped emotional patterns with surgical precision. It was like they maintained a strategist's war room in their minds. They catalogued micro-expressions, voice changes, behavioral patterns. They understood the psychology of manipulation better than the manipulators themselves. They could predict outcomes, forecast relationship disasters, sense betrayals months before they occurred. And here is what made Jung's blood run cold. They had never used this knowledge, not once, until something pushed them past their breaking point. These empaths process emotional information faster and more accurately than everyone else. Their brains are wired for pattern recognition in human behavior. Society had taught them that this gift was a curse. Every time they tried to voice what they saw, the lies, the manipulation, the hidden agendas, people called them too sensitive or overly emotional. They learned to silence themselves, to doubt their perceptions, to apologize for seeing what others could not. Jung wrote that the empath does not lose their mind from feeling too much. They lose their mind from being told their feelings are wrong. He realized these individuals were not having a nervous breakdown. They were having a breakthrough. Their pattern recognition was not a malfunction. It was an advanced feature. The truth does not disappear just because you stop speaking it. It accumulates. The second unusual sign is even more disturbing. Because people with highly differentiated perception see others' shadows clearly, they become targets for what Jung extensively documented as shadow projection. When someone's shadow is reflected back through another person's clear perception, the unconscious mind has two choices: integrate the shadow or attack the mirror. Jung documented this pattern repeatedly in his clinical work. The person who sees clearly gets blamed for creating the problems they are merely observing. His patients with differentiated intuition experienced this constantly. When they would gently suggest that someone seemed troubled, that person would explode at them for being negative or creating drama. When they would express concern about obvious problems, they would be accused of being judgmental or manufacturing issues where none existed. Jung realized this was not coincidence. It was psychological defense. It is easier to attack the person reflecting your shadow than to examine what is being reflected. This creates what Jung called the scapegoat phenomenon. Highly perceptive individuals often become the designated problem in every group they enter, not because they cause problems, but because they reveal problems that already exist in the collective unconscious. The bearer of superior perception becomes the repository for all that the group cannot consciously acknowledge about itself. This is the price of clear sight. Here is how you recognize dangerous shadow projection in real time. First, they accuse you of motivations you never had with absolute certainty. They tell you what you are thinking, what you are feeling, what you are intending, and they do it with such conviction that you start questioning your own reality. Second, they are immune to contradictory evidence. No amount of proof can shake their perceptions. You can explain, clarify, provide evidence, but they interpret your attempts to correct their misperceptions as further proof of their accuracy. Third, they consistently make themselves the victim in narratives where the projector is always the innocent party. They end up in conflicts where they are always wronged, always betrayed, always suffering at the hands of others. Malice. The cast of characters changes, but they remain the victim. This is how the projector unconsciously organizes a social attack around their own denied qualities. The truly terrifying part is how shadow projectors unconsciously recruit others into their distorted reality. Jung called this collective possession. When someone presents their projections with absolute conviction, others experience psychological pressure to align their perceptions with the projector's certainty rather than trust their own contradictory observations. This is how families turn against scapegoated members, how workplaces mob innocent employees, how communities destroy individuals based on projected accusations that have no basis in reality. For the highly perceptive individual, this creates a reality distortion field around them. People sense something is off but cannot articulate what. The empath becomes isolated not by choice, but by the collective unconscious agreement to reject what they represent, a mirror that society cannot bear to look into. The third and most unusual sign appears when the high-vibration individual reaches their absolute breaking point. Jung documented what he called shadow integration under extreme duress. The trigger was always a profound betrayal by someone they trusted. The empath would discover infidelity, financial betrayal, or emotional manipulation from their closest person. What made it devastating was not the act itself. It was the realization that they had seen the signs all along and ignored them. Their pattern recognition finally overwhelmed their need to believe the best in people. And here is what happened next. Most people would expect empaths to cry, to scream, to fall apart. Their abusers expected that too. They were prepared for emotional chaos. What happened instead was something that terrified everyone involved. The empaths became unnaturally calm. Jung described it as the moment the victim realizes they have been playing chess while everyone else thought it was checkers. These empaths did not attack. They did not rage. They simply began to speak truth. They revealed everything they had observed, catalogued, and silently endured, not with cruelty, but with clinical precision, like surgeons identifying each diseased organ before removing it. This was not revenge, it was clarity. These empaths were finally using their gift of complete perception, not to excuse behavior, but to expose it. They stopped denying the parts of themselves they were taught to hide. Their suppressed intelligence, their silenced intuition, their denied strength. When they finally integrated these aspects of themselves, they became what Jung called psychologically complete. Here is what made these cases so disturbing for Jung. The transformation was permanent. These patients did not cycle back into people-pleasing. They did not apologize for their newfound boundaries. They did not second-guess their perceptions anymore. They had become what Jung feared most: empaths who could no longer be manipulated. The changes did not stop at the psychological level. Jung documented how these individuals' entire lives transformed within months. They left abusive relationships with strategic precision. They cut contact with toxic family members without emotional drama. They rebuilt their lives on their own terms. Jung observed them becoming what he called selectively empathetic, still deeply caring but strategically protective of where that care flowed. The most disturbing part for Jung was how these transformed empaths' presence affected others. People who had once walked all over them suddenly felt nervous around them. They could not explain why. These empaths were not aggressive or cruel, but everyone sensed something had fundamentally changed. Jung identified what he called the predator's instinct. Manipulative people can sense when their usual tactics will not work. They avoid integrated empaths like vampires avoid sunlight. These individuals had become extraordinarily successful. Their businesses thrived because they could read clients' real needs before they voiced them. Their new relationships were healthy because they could identify emotional predators within minutes. Their decisions were flawless because they trusted their intuitive intelligence completely. Jung realized something that made his blood run cold. These empaths had not become less empathetic. They had become perfectly empathetic, which meant they were also perfectly strategic. They could manipulate others as easily as they had once been manipulated. They understood human psychology at a level that made them nearly omnipotent in social situations. Here is what truly terrified Jung. These transformed empaths chose not to use this power destructively. They could have destroyed every person who had ever hurt them. Instead, they simply removed toxic people from their lives and moved on. Jung realized he had witnessed the birth of what he called the integrated empath, someone with both the sensitivity to feel everything and the wisdom to choose what deserved their energy. These individuals have become what every manipulator fears most: someone who can see through them completely but no longer needs anything from them. Jung documented how their transformation forced everyone around them to evolve or reveal their true nature. The healthy people in their lives grew stronger from their example. The toxic people exposed themselves through desperate attempts to pull these empaths back into old patterns. Jung observed something he called the empath's mirror effect. These transformed individuals did not have to actively confront people's dysfunction anymore. Their mere presence reflected issues back with uncomfortable clarity. Manipulators could not stand to be around them. They felt exposed, seen through, unable to operate their usual psychological games. Meanwhile, authentic people felt safe with these empaths for the first time. The awakened empath becomes a living lie detector, not through judgment, but through presence. The final state Jung observed was what he called love with boundaries. These individuals became selectively generous with their gifts. They could be incredibly kind to those who deserved it, and ruthlessly precise with those who did not. They used their emotional intelligence strategically, not just defensively. They became what Jung privately called psychological architects, people who could read, influence, and navigate human systems with supernatural precision. Jung realized these transformed empaths could no longer be victimized because they saw manipulation coming from miles away and neutralized it before it could take root. These individuals did not just heal themselves. They became immune to psychological abuse while maintaining their capacity for genuine love and connection. They proved that the empath's journey is not from sensitivity to numbness, but from unconscious absorption to conscious choice. They became not less empathetic, but perfectly empathetic. Here is what makes this discovery about high-vibration individuals so important for you. If you recognize these three signs in yourself, you are not broken. You are not too sensitive. You are not imagining things. Your superior perception is not a malfunction in your psychological makeup. It is an advanced feature of consciousness development. You are not broken because you see everything others miss. You are psychologically ahead of your time. The question is not whether you should suppress your perception to fit in with collective unconsciousness. The question is whether you will develop the skills necessary to integrate your perception consciously. Jung's work offers a path from dangerous isolation to conscious service, from overwhelming perception to integrated wisdom, from psychological curse to evolutionary contribution. You were born to see everything, not to suffer in silence, but to serve consciousness evolution. The world needs your insights, but it needs them delivered with the integration, wisdom, and strategic awareness that transform dangerous perception into cultural medicine. Your gift is not your burden. Your unconscious relationship to your gift is your burden. Learn to integrate it consciously, and you become exactly what Jung believed highly perceptive individuals were meant to be. Consciousness pioneers, preparing humanity for psychological development that is inevitable but not yet obvious. Your superior perception is not a malfunction. It is not a curse. It is the mark of someone who processes reality at a deeper level than most. The three unusual signs Jung identified, the strategic mind hidden beneath kindness, the target for shadow projection, and the terrifying transformation into integration, these are not warnings of pathology. They are stages of evolution. The goal is not to see less, but to see more wisely and consciously. Jung spent decades studying patients who seemed gentle and broken until something inside them snapped. His research proved that the empath's journey is not about becoming less sensitive. It is about becoming consciously sensitive. And consciousness, Jung realized, is what transforms victims into forces of nature. The most beautiful part of Jung's findings: these transformed empaths never lost their capacity for love. They just learned to love themselves as fiercely as they once loved others. If you are an empath or highly sensitive person experiencing these signs, remember Jung's essential discovery. Your sensitivity is not your weakness, it is your weapon, and the day you learn to wield it consciously is the day you become truly powerful. Not dangerous to innocent people, dangerous to those who would exploit your gifts. That is exactly what the world needs more of. Empaths who know their worth, trust their perceptions, and refuse to dim their light for anyone's comfort. People with high vibration who have integrated their shadows, who see clearly without being destroyed by what they see, who love deeply without losing themselves. This is not a curse, but an evolutionary step. Your sensitivity is your weapon wielded consciously. If you recognize yourself in these three unusual signs, share your experience in the comments. Sometimes recognizing these patterns in our past can protect us in our future. Your journey of integration connects with others walking the same path. Subscribe for more insights into Jung's discoveries about psychological development that transcends collective unconscious limitations. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.